Good evening, everyone, and good morning good evening from Glasgow, and good morning from Christchurch, and welcome along to Around the World in 8 Events, #The Conversation. I'm Matt Lamb, and this is Loren from ChristchurchNZ. How are you?
Hello, good, thank you. Beautiful day here.
It's a beautiful day. The moon is shining somewhere high in the sky here. So, first of all, Loren, thanks very much for joining. Do you want to just tell us all about who you are and where you're calling from and what you do in Christchurch?
I'm called Loren Tokuinua. Hello, my name is Loren. Ko Te Atiawa e Te Iwi, which means I am Te Atiawa descent. I'm Māori, and in New Zealand that is our first way of introducing ourselves. And I am also General Manager of Destination at ChristchurchNZ. So that means I head up tourism, events, conferences and conventions, film and education for the city. Obviously we are in COVID-19 lockdown here in Christchurch, but still working very hard on what the future of our city looks like.
So tell us about what ChristchurchNZ really does for Christchurch, where it was formed, and just how it's built an image for Christchurch since, maybe if you want to go back, say 5-10 years, and where it's at the moment.
Yeah, so ChristchurchNZ is actually a relatively new entity. It was formed almost 3 years ago. We are an amalgamation of tourism, major events, international education and economic development. So essentially we're a holistic economic development and marketing agency for the city. Christchurch itself went through a series of devastating earthquakes in 2011, which have really impacted the city. So the formation of our agency really timed with Christchurch coming out of the post-quake phase. So 90% of our CBD was destroyed in the earthquake, and we're now about 75% of the way there of being rebuilt. And so our role is to really platform Christchurch's economy out of the post-quake construction stimulus and into a more sustainable economic future. We have been very focused on shifting Christchurch's brand and our narrative and the city storytelling and the way that people refer to Christchurch. A year ago, we had the tragic Christchurch terrorist attack and the shootings, which really platformed us back again into a global stratosphere where people knew our city's name for the wrong reasons. And our agency actually coordinated the response to those shootings. And what we really did was shift the narrative of Christchurch to be about a place of social change, a place of resilience, a place of aroha or love, a place of inclusivity, and a place of diversity. And really, diversity was the reason we were attacked, because we are so inclusive. So in the last year, since that, those terrible attacks, we have been really working on the storytelling and where our city is going. And 2020 was meant to be the year. So here we are.
So let's get right into that. So tell me, what does 2020 now look like?
Yeah, so 2020, as I said, the post-quake construction boom had sort of ended. We have a significant amount of amazing new infrastructure in the city. So a brand new convention centre, international convention centre, a brand new mega liner cruise berth, a stadium, a multi-use arena, which will be completed relatively soon, a metro sports facility, which is an international swimming and indoor sports facility. So those are all opening in the very near future. And on top of that, we were welcoming direct flights from Los Angeles. Our major events portfolio was looking incredible. I can't think of what else I have forgotten to highlight. We were hosting the international tourism convention that New Zealand hosts. So it was all looking very rosy. Now, 2021 looks great. So ultimately, we've had to pivot very much into a recovery phase. So we're in a business planning process at the moment, and that has shifted from maximising the infrastructure investments and some of the storytelling aspects of what we do, and focused on recovery for our key industries, and so that they can come out of it stronger than ever. So in some ways, we hope that we are positioned very well to rebound from COVID-19 a lot faster than potentially the rest of New Zealand.
How are you currently supporting with the attractions that I know is in your portfolio? So how are you, what are you saying to them What's the guidelines? What's the conversation you're having currently with tourism?
So we're running quite significant support services around subsidies. New Zealand has put in a wage subsidy so that employers can employ their staff for 12 weeks. At the same time, I've pivoted my whole tourism trade team into getting under the hood of businesses, no matter how large or small, to help them reduce costs and to make sure that they can kind of pivot their offering to what we think may be the short to medium term future of tourism, which is the local and the domestic audience. In Canterbury, which is the wider region that Christchurch is in, so we run actually all of Canterbury, not just Christchurch. For every dollar that a Cantabrian spends onshore on tourism, they spend $6 overseas. So if there is a financial recession where people are going to tighten their belts anyway, we hope if they can even spend one additional dollar on a tourism experience locally, we're doubling our domestic productivity in tourism. Yep. So we've established a program for our attractions, accommodation, and our inbound and outbound travel agents, which is called, I guess somewhat unoriginally, but it's called Pivot to Domestic. We have been approached by Tourism New Zealand to roll it out across the country. And essentially that program is one-on-one mentoring with a qualified person in the tourism industry who's been paid for to then go in and support individual businesses in redeveloping their experience, their pricing, their packaging, their digital footprint, everything that they can do to attract a local and domestic audience. So we've got 35 businesses in that program at the moment, with another 95 on the waiting list, which is really significant for a city of our size.
It was reported in New Zealand media that domestic tourism is worth, for New Zealand, $23 billion for the economy, and international tourism is worth $12 billion. So that with that 60 and 40%, what do you think the overall look is going to be for the future for tourism? Do you think there actually might be a shift naturally that people will be looking more towards keeping New Zealanders in New Zealand?
Yeah, I think there'll be a few things that happen. Kiwis are notorious travellers. We have an expression: don't leave home until you've seen your own backyard, which I'm sure you guys do too. But Kiwis are notorious for heading, straight to London and then off through Southeast Asia, and so there's a bit of narrative that we need to do in mindset shift and changing people's perceptions of travelling at home. That, because we are such a destination, we have a perception within our domestic audiences that we're overpriced, we're over-touristed. It's not the authentic Kiwi experience. If you're walking, one of the great walks, which is some of our hiking trails, if you're doing that with a guide, because Kiwis are intrepid and we don't need guides and we don't need to pay for services like that. Why would we do that when we can do it on our own? So we need to kind of explain the value chain of tourism and the better experience that you can have.
Let's just get into that last point of tourism then, which is virtual tourism. Do you think, do you think there is actually a market now for virtual tourism in the future?
Particularly from a New Zealand perspective, I think lockdown has created a great desire in Kiwis to get out and about. And I think that virtual tourism is a wonderful marketing play, and I think it is a fantastic way to support businesses and giving a taster of what they offer. But in the Kiwi mindset, I don't think that anything could replace what it really feels like to stand on top of a mountain and look across an incredible vista. And for tourism's future, I actually hope that virtual tourism is used just as a marketing play as well, rather than people sitting in their own homes and experiencing our beautiful landscapes. So it might sound slightly cynical. I think it is a wonderful pivot for people to be able to do right now when they're not as productive, and they can create incredible content which drives dream phase planning, and that's what we're working through, is how do we drive dream phase planning using virtual tourism, and then how do we turn that to conversion? What
do you think the future is going to look like? You've got all these new venues. What do you think is the new look of events moving forward?
It is my hope that for a more sustainable future, people think twice about whether or not they need to be in a meeting in person, because there's an environmental aspect to travel which we do need to consider, and I think we need to focus on a more sustainable future. Our communities, both our knowledge communities and our just our everyday community well-being, they all rely on other people in person. So I think we need to think about how people can attend meetings or events virtually, but still cater for the fact that inherently as humans, we need connection with real people.
Do you think people will be able, maybe not necessarily New Zealand, because you went into lockdown, you've kept the numbers low, moving away from, like in the UK, we've got 185,000 cases. So really there's this psychological element. People don't want to necessarily go into a mass event space where there's 55,000 people sitting in a stadium. So how do you think you'll get over that psychological element? Are you thinking about how you can make sure that people know, get back out, come back, see us, smell the fresh air, feel about you, that kind of element? Do you think that will be a concern for moving forward?
Yes, I do. I think particularly in the South Island, we probably are feeling pretty safe, and the South Island hasn't had a case for, I think like basically with the South Island is almost COVID-19 free.
Okay.
However, I do think fear is going to be a factor that we will need to alleviate concerns, but also undertake, really stringent hygiene measures to make sure that events can go ahead. So, we'll probably be looking at prioritising outdoor events, events where there's contact tracing, or, heavily ventilated venues. Fortunately, all our venues are brand new. So, it means that they've got quite good ventilation and air conditioning and easy processes to put in place. And after the shootings last year for New Zealand, particularly in Christchurch, all of our events became a lot more safety conscious anyway, and obviously in a different way. But even that was a mindset shift for Kiwis, because we're quite, we just don't think it will happen here, right? So the shootings, we never expected that would happen in New Zealand. And similarly, from a pandemic perspective, we have this luxury of being at the bottom of the world where we're probably just a little bit more laid back. We have I don't know if you've ever heard it, she'll be right.
Yeah, she'll be right. I was just about, I don't want to say it, but yeah.
Yeah. And so I think we just need to balance the fact that Kiwis naturally have a she'll be right attitude with making sure that we've got really good processes in place around hygiene and contact tracing, but ensuring that our community feels safe and comfortable and not like that their she'll be right attitude is compromised. So it's a tricky balance.
When it comes to in 2 years' time for Christchurch, what's the one thing that you think people need to know about Christchurch for if they were picking to go anywhere in the world?
If you want to come to a city where people do things differently in a really progressive and forward-thinking way, then this is the place to visit. If you want to come to a place where you can learn from people who know how to kind of keep going with great attitudes, then this is the place to come. But on top of that, we've got spectacular landscapes, great skiing, beautiful mountains, excellent surfing, and a beautiful brand new city, which is pretty epic. So
it's the place to go.
What's not to love?
Well, listen, we'll leave it there. Loren, thank you so much for joining us today on Around the World in 8 Events, #The Conversation. That was great. That was just a great insight. So thank you for joining.
No problem. Thank you, Matt. Thanks for coming to visit us last year.